Jonathan Hoffman, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we stay on the topic. Now, the European Union's Foreign Affairs Chief Kaja Kallas is condemning the release of disturbing videos by Hamas and Islamic Jihad. The footage shows visibly emaciated Israeli hostages, an image Kaja Kallas calls appalling and a sign of Hamas's barbarity. In a post on X, Kaja Kallas demanded the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. She also called for Hamas to disarm and end its control in Gaza. The EU diplomat added that while the hostages' suffering is unacceptable, it's equally urgent to allow large-scale humanitarian aid to reach civilians in need. Now we go back to our guest discussion with Jonathan Hoffman. He's a former vice president of Zionist Federation of the United Kingdom. Thank you, Jonathan, for staying with us. Now, how do you interpret the European Union's strong condemnation for Hamas's actions, particularly regarding the release of disturbing hostage videos?
Well, the hostage videos are incredibly disturbing. There are still, on my calculation, around 20 hostages still alive in Gaza. And clearly, Hamas has made these videos and released these videos in order to raise the pressure on Israel at a time, as we discussed, when the pressure on Israel is already stronger than it's ever been. It's absolutely to be condemned, but, you know, the Israeli government is in a very difficult position because it has two aims. Number one, to release the hostages. Number two, to defeat Hamas. And those two aims can be conflicting. The greater the intensity of the attacks on Hamas in Gaza, the more likely the hostages are to be caught up, to be wounded or even killed. So it's an incredibly difficult balancing act for the Israeli government, and you know, nobody can envy them, the government, the task of trying to get this balance right. Maybe it's an impossible balance to get right, but nobody can envy the difficulty of the task in trying to get this balance correct.
Yes, and Jonathan, now you've also mentioned that it's very difficult, the situation, and meanwhile Kaja Kallas has called for both the release of hostages and increased humanitarian aid access to Gaza. How realistic is it for Israel to balance both these calls while maintaining its security priorities?
It's incredibly difficult. I mean, the Jewish Sabbath is on a Saturday, as you know, and after the end of every Sabbath on a Saturday evening, there's massive demonstrations from the families of the hostages. I saw yesterday they blocked the Ayalon highway, which is the main motorway or highway out of Tel Aviv. So the pressure is massive, and it's impossible to get this balance right. The harder the attacks on Hamas in Gaza, the more likely are the hostages to be injured or even killed. The one point is that when there are no hostages left in Gaza, then Israel would be able to pull out all the stops and attack as strongly as it wants. But nobody wants that eventuality to come. We want the hostages have to be released, and it's worth remembering that if the hostages were released today, all the hostages, then the conflict would stop. But so far, Hamas has not accepted that.
Thank you very much, Jonathan Hoffman, for sharing that insight and staying with us throughout our news. Now we move on.